Today we delve into the harrowing story of the Rupert family murders, a case that shocked a nation. It was during their annual Easter celebrations when James Rupert, seemingly a regular family member, snapped, taking the lives of his 11 family members in what would be recorded as one of the largest mass murders in a private residence at that time. Join me as we remember not just the tragedy, but the lives that were lost. James Rupert entered the world on April 12, 1934, the son of Charity and Leonard Rupert. He had one older brother, Leonard Jr., and their family home was small, lacking even basic amenities like running water. In the cramped backyard, Leonard's raised chickens, creating an uncomfortable environment for young James, who suffered from asthma. The feathers and dander from the animals aggravated his condition, but his parents remained indifferent, their lack of concern painfully evident. James's father, a man with a violent temper, dispensed little affection to his children. His mother often referred to him as a mistake, lamenting that she had always wanted a daughter. At school, things didn't improve. James faced academic struggles and was frequently bullied. His asthma barred him from participating in physical activities, unlike his older brother, Leonard, who basked in their mother's favor as a star athlete and top student. Tragically, James spent much of his life in his brother's shadow, a pattern that would haunt him for years to come. At the tender age of 12, tragedy struck when James's father succumbed to tuberculosis. With the patriarch gone, Leonard Jr. swiftly assumed the role of the family's leader, but this shift only intensified James's struggles. Following their father's death, both Charity and Leonard Jr. seemed to turn their backs on him, exacerbating the mistreatment he endured. Bullied at school and regarded as a disappointment at home, the weight of his circumstances became unbearable. By the time he reached 16, James felt he could take no more. Desperate to escape the relentless harassment from both peers and family, James attempted to end his life using a bedsheet, but the attempt failed. When his mother discovered his actions, she responded with further punishment, deepening his despair. Despite these challenges, James persevered, graduating from high school and briefly attending college before dropping out after just 2 years. He later sought work as a draftsman but struggled to find stability, often remaining unemployed for months at a time, living with his mother due to financial constraints. He had little choice but to rely on borrowed money from her or his brother for survival. Amid his struggles, James found solace in a new hobby: guns. He became an avid collector, amassing an impressive arsenal, and was known for his exceptional marksmanship, often seen practicing his shots along the Miami River in Hamilton, Ohio. In stark contrast, his older brother Leonard graduated with an engineering degree and built a successful career, moving out of their childhood home to marry a woman named Alma. Together, they raised 8 children in their own home, a life that seemed worlds apart from James's own struggles. At 40, James was just 5 and weighed a mere 135 pounds, often facing criticism for his petite stature. In fact, he only had one known relationship, which did not result in any children. It would be an understatement to say James felt overshadowed and perhaps envious of Leonard's seemingly perfect life. Despite his tumultuous life, those who knew James personally often described him as modest and quiet, lacking any inclination towards violence and steering clear of trouble. However, by the age of 40, he was still living at home, and his mother, Charity, had reached her breaking point. His ongoing unemployment, coupled with his nightly visits to the bar, became increasingly intolerable. Constant arguments ensued between mother and son, and it became evident that a change was necessary. Charity issued several threats of eviction. But the final ultimatum came on March 29, 1975, a fateful day that would alter their lives forever. After a fierce argument with his mother, James stormed out of the house, seeking solace at a local bar known as the 19th Hole Cocktail Lounge. There, he met Wanda Bishop, an employee who would later recount his profoundly troubled demeanor. James opened up to her, sharing the heavy burdens he carried: his mother's relentless demands and the looming threat of homelessness. In a moment of vulnerability, he confided in Wanda that he felt the need to solve the problem, an ominous statement foreshadowing the darkness that lay ahead. James left the bar around 11 p.m., only to return later that night. When Wanda saw him again, she inquired whether he had resolved his issues. His response was chilling no, not yet. He lingered at the bar until its closing at 2:30 a.m. The weight of his unresolved turmoil hanging heavily in the air. The next day, March 30th, 1975, dawned as Easter Sunday. Charity had anticipated the arrival of Leonard and his family for the holiday celebrations, but feeling unwell, she decided to postpone their gathering until later in the afternoon. At around 4 p.m., Leonard, along with his wife Alma and their 8 children, older son Leonard 3, age 17, Michael 16, Thomas 15, Carol 13, Ann 12, David 11, Teresa 9, and little John, aged 4, arrived at their mother's home on Minor Avenue. Charity welcomed them with open arms, her warmth contrasting sharply with the tension that had been brewing within the family. Meanwhile, James remained upstairs, still sleeping off the previous night's escapades. Eventually, he joined his family, mingling and watching his nieces and nephews joyfully hunt for Easter eggs from the porch, all while engaging in conversation with his brother. The atmosphere lightened as the family moved back inside, where Charity began preparing sloppy joes for the gathering. As the festivities unfolded, an overwhelming sense of despair began to engulf James. Feeling suffocated by the cheerful atmosphere, he decided he needed to clear his head and sought solace by the river for some target practice. He retreated to his room, retrieving his .357 Magnum, 2.22 handguns, and an .18 shotgun before heading back to the kitchen. Leaning against the refrigerator, he announced to his family that he was leaving. In the kitchen, Charity stood at the stove, while Leonard and Alma sat at the table. Their children filled the home with laughter. One daughter waited for the bathroom, another was already inside, and the remaining 6 were playing in the living room, blissfully unaware of the darkness that loomed ahead. As James prepared to leave, Leonard casually inquired about his car, asking, "How's your Volkswagen, Jimmy?" At that moment, something within James snapped. Without a second thought, he raised his .357 Magnum and shot Leonard in the head, swiftly turning the gun on his sister-in-law and pulling the trigger once more. Chaos erupted as Charity rushed toward her son, desperate to protect her family, but she too fell victim before she could reach him. In a horrifying spree, James moved into the living room, where he opened fire on the children. In a scene of utter disbelief, none of them attempted to flee or hide from their uncle. He paused only to reload his weapon before continuing his rampage. In less than 5 minutes, James had shot 10 of his family members in the head, including his mother, who he struck in the chest. To ensure their deaths, he fired 2 additional shots into each victim. After the horror unfolded, James sat in the aftermath for 3 agonizing hours, contemplating taking his own life. Ultimately, he picked up the phone and dialed the police. When the operator answered, a soft, trembling voice quietly declared, "There's been a shooting." When officers arrived at the home, they found James waiting just inside the front door, seemingly resigned to his fate. The scene that greeted them was nothing short of horrific. Blood spattered throughout the house, seeping into the floorboards and trickling down into the basement. There were no signs of a struggle. It was a chilling testament to the sudden and brutal violence that had taken place. James confessed to the horrific acts without hesitation, and he was arrested without resistance. The news of the massacre sent shockwaves through the small community, where the Ruperts were known as a kind and upstanding family. The most staggering revelation was that James, the quiet and unassuming man, was the gunman. Even today, many remain incredulous that he was capable of such heinous acts. He was charged with 11 counts of aggravated homicide, a grim testament to the tragedy that had unfolded. During questioning, James grew increasingly uncooperative, adamantly insisting that he was insane. His first trial commenced in Hamilton, the very place where the crime had unfolded, before a panel of 3 judges. He was found guilty on all 11 counts of murder and subsequently sentenced to life in prison. However, the verdict was soon overshadowed by a declaration of a mistrial. It was determined that James had not received a fair trial due to the local community's familiarity with him. The small town setting raised concerns about bias, leading to the conclusion that he had not been given a genuine opportunity to defend himself. A new trial was mandated, this time relocated to Findlay, Ohio. It commenced in June 1957, and the prosecution came prepared with compelling new evidence that suggested James had meticulously planned the attack. Witnesses testified that he was frequently seen practicing his shooting by the river, a detail that painted a picture of premeditation. Additionally, the owner of a local gun store testified that James had inquired about silencers for his firearms just a month before the tragic events. The prosecution also called Wanda to the stand, who recounted James's evident disdain for his mother, recalling the unsettling conversation they had shared just hours before the murders. The outcome of the second trial mirrored the first. James was found guilty on all 11 counts. In July, he received a staggering sentence of 11 consecutive life sentences, one for each life he had taken. After spending several years behind bars, James sought to appeal his conviction in 1982, enlisting the help of a defense attorney named Holbrook. Convinced of James's insanity, Holbrook was determined to argue his case effectively. He went so far as to fund the expenses for expert psychiatrists from across the country, aiming to substantiate his claim that James was not only unfit for trial but in need of mental health treatment. The evaluations revealed that James had long suffered from severe mental health issues, a condition that had plagued him for most of his life. Consequently, a third trial was granted. On July 23, 1982, James once again faced the judges. The defense argued that he was a paranoid psychotic who had acted out of uncontrollable rage when he shot his family. It was no secret that he harbored deep feelings of inferiority, particularly towards his brother. The defense maintained that James's psychosis was so acute that he irrationally blamed Leonard for all his misfortunes, including mundane issues like car trouble, illustrating the profound impact of his troubled psyche. The defense argued that James's paranoia extended to the belief that Leonard would even go so far as to sabotage his car simply to provoke him. They contended that his troubled childhood had instilled deep-seated paranoia that gradually intensified over the years until it became unbearable. Rather than imprisonment, they asserted that James needed treatment in a mental institution. Meanwhile, the prosecution painted a starkly different picture, suggesting that financial motives underpinned the horrific crime. As the only surviving member of the Rupert family, James stood to inherit all the assets from his mother and brother's estates, which the prosecution estimated at around $300,000, equivalent to over $3 million today. The prosecution argued that James's ongoing unemployment, coupled with the threat of eviction, pushed him to take drastic actions. They suggested that turning himself in to the police was part of a calculated plan, allowing him to initiate an insanity plea from the outset. If convicted of murder, he would forfeit any chance of compensation, however, if deemed insane. He could eventually inherit the family assets after being declared cured and released from a mental institution. This potential motive painted a chilling picture of a man whose desperate circumstances led him down a path of unimaginable violence. After hearing all the arguments, the court rendered its decision on July 23, 1982. James was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of his mother, Charity, and his brother, Leonard. However, for the other 9 members of the Rupert family, he was deemed not guilty by reason of insanity. He received a life sentence for each of the 2 guilty counts, to be served consecutively at the Alano Correctional Institution in Lima, Ohio. James's first opportunity for parole came in 1995, but it was denied, and he has faced rejection at every subsequent hearing. The Rupert family was laid to rest in the Arlington Memorial Gardens in Cincinnati, Ohio, a solemn reminder of the tragic loss. A year after the murders, Charity's home was opened to the public, and the contents within were sold at auction, marking a disturbing chapter in the community's history. The house stood as a dark emblem of sorrow, changing hands multiple times but struggling to retain tenants. Many families reported eerie occurrences during their stays, leaving after only a few months due to unsettling experiences, disembodied voices, inexplicable noises, slamming doors, and footsteps echoing through the empty halls. Families continued to come and go, unable to endure the unsettling atmosphere, until the house was eventually abandoned for years. In more recent times, the property was purchased by a new owner, who claimed that no strange occurrences had transpired since their arrival, yet the shadows of its past lingered. As of October 2021, James was transferred to the Franklin Medical Center in Columbus, Ohio, where he will remain until he is eligible for parole again in 2025. At the age of 90. Given the circumstances surrounding his crimes, the Supreme Court had temporarily suspended the death penalty for a period of 3 years, rendering James ineligible for that ultimate punishment, even after multiple retrials. Consequently, the death penalty was entirely off the table for these crimes. While this case may feel a bit shorter in narrative, it's a reflection of the tragic events interwoven with family celebrations. Nevertheless, this serves as a profoundly sad chapter, much like many other family murders we explore. As always, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments section below. Your insights are invaluable, and I look forward to engaging in discussion with you. If you found this documentary interesting, please give it a thumbs up so we know you'd like to see more. If you're not already part of our community under the True Crime Documentary, we'd love for you to join us. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday, whether you spend it with family, friends, or in your own special way. Thank you to everyone who stuck with us until the end. Your support truly means a lot to me. You all make this community special. Take care, and I'll see you in the next documentary. Bye for now.